Hey guys, welcome to Cooking in Quarantine by popular demand, our first episode featuring the famous Nannie Buns. If you've ever come across this, if you've known our family at all, you will have eaten these buns because we all ate them and we all called them Nannie Buns. Unless you are a Howell cousin, in which case you probably called them Mum Buns, or maybe some people called them Brown Buns because they were made by the Brown girls. I don't really know. Anyway, they're really, really good, and now's the time to bake them because we're stuck in quarantine. We got nothing else to do. This is going to take you more than 8 hours, but not really. So we're going to start with a cup of milk, just like standard milk. You know what? If you don't have milk, well, you could use water if you had to. You could use tinned milk, you could use powdered milk, whatever, but we have milk, so we're going to use milk. 1 cup, put that in a saucepan on the stove and turn it up to high. We're going to scald that. Now over here, we have a half a cup of warm water. And I just put a thermometer in the cup here so that I can give you a sense of what the temperature should be. It says lukewarm, and I mean, it should be like over 100 degrees, but not like 120 degrees. It should be warm is what I'm saying. So into that, we are now going to put 4.5 teaspoons of Fleischmann's yeast, or whatever yeast you have. If you have the little envelopes of yeast, then you're going to need 2 of those. If you're a time traveler from 1962 and you have a viable cake of yeast, you will need 2 viable cakes of yeast. You are not a time traveler. You do not have cakes of yeast. You probably have this stuff or the envelopes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and a half teaspoons of your yeast, and then we need a half teaspoon of the white stuff, sugar, to make that go. So just grab your, and that can be a generous half teaspoon. There we go, throw that in. And my water, again, is about 100 degrees there. We'll give this a little bit of a stir just to make sure that it doesn't stick to the bottom. If it sticks to the bottom, it doesn't really soften properly, and it's harder to work with. So we gave that a little thing. We're going to put that there to work its magic for a moment. Yeast, put that over there. The milk is still warming. We're going to give that a little minute, but in the meantime, I just want to acquaint you with this little item. This was a Christmas gift that my mom and my stepdad put together for my aunties and uncle at Christmas 2001. And it's a whole bunch of stuff out of my nanny's old hideous cookbook. And I mean, there's like Nannie Buns are in here. There's some good stuff in here. But I swore to myself that if the apocalypse hit, that would be the time when I would cook some of these recipes because, ugh. So we're just gonna take a little trip down memory lane, and we've got 2 weeks of quarantine to get through. So as we go, we'll see what I have the ingredients to bake, and we'll do that. But for now, like rich dark fruit cake, I could be in quarantine forever and not miss fruit cake. Okay, but now here's a wonder for you: salt pork cake. So a pound of salt pork ground fine, a pint of boiling water, 2 cups brown sugar, a cup of molasses, 6 cups of flour, a teaspoon of cloves, 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, a teaspoon of mustard, 2 pounds of currants, 2 pounds of raisins, a cup of nut meats, half a quarter pound of dates, a quarter pound of citron, quarter pound of lemon peel, and 6 teaspoons of baking powder. And I'd like to remind you that the first ingredient in this was salt pork. So I don't know what that would taste like, and we're never ever going to find out. My milk back here is scalded, so that's exciting. The next thing we're going to need is shortening. Crisco brand, because when you're stocking for the apocalypse and you have to buy things at Shoppers Drug Mart, you don't really care if you don't get the less expensive name brand stuff. So So we need 3/4 of a cup of shortening. For those of you who've never worked with shortening before, there's a little measuring thing on here, so you just need to cut however much it is. So we need 3/4 of a cup, nicely marked off. And we'll just slice this with a knife, slicey, slicey, and throw that in our scalded milk to let it melt in. I would like to point out and remind you all that I absolutely scrubbed my hands thoroughly before we started this. And yes, I also sterilized my phone. Thank you for caring. This is important. Well, we're stuck here in quarantine, and we should be stuck here, people. Just so you know, the state of emergency was announced today in Nova Scotia. And so that's 7 days out from our first case. Yesterday morning, when I was going to start this video, we had 14 cases of COVID-19. And then this morning, when I was going to start it again, we were at 21 cases of COVID-19, and then a state of emergency was declared, so I halted my video so I could run out and fill my prescription for the next 30 days, and by the time I got home from the pharmacy, we were at 28 cases. So guys, stay home. We need to flatten that curve. And while we're doing that, let's bake some delicious stuff. So we're just kind of melting this Crisco here. Now, if you don't have it, you can use butter, you can use margarine. I feel like if you were really like scraping the bottom of the barrel, you could probably use like coconut oil maybe. I'm just trying to think outside the box here. I just dropped my spoon in there. That's nice. I should have had a bigger spoon. Yeah, live and learn. So we'll put these things away for later and continue to stir. I'm kind of doing this in real time for you because for those of you who have never made these and feel like it's a big time commitment, you're not really sure how long it's actually supposed to take. So, you know, some things take longer than you would expect, and that includes getting shortening to melt. So while this is happening, I'm actually going to put it back on the stove top just to let it do its thing. And in the meantime, in this big bowl, we are going to mix up, get the right page here. Whoops. Oh, pound cake. Boy, maybe we'll get to that while we're still in quarantine. Surprise muffins. I wonder what the surprise is. Surprise muffins. Hope cottage casserole. Okay, Nannie Buns. Here we go. So in here we need 2 eggs. There's an egg. And another egg. Whee. So there's our pair of eggs. And we are going to beat those eggs with 3/4 of a cup of sugar. Here's our sugar again. In case you can't see what's happening with the yeast, this is really starting to proof. It's getting quite floofy. I need my sugar cup measure. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4 of a cup of sugar, and beat that up thoroughly. That is how Nannie would have wanted it, and that is how we shall do it in the quarantine bunker. So, we've given that a nice scramble there. Next, we add 2 teaspoons of salt. I always used to spill the salt on purpose when I was doing things like this so that I would have an excuse to take a pinch of salt and then throw it spectacularly over my shoulder to ward off bad luck. Or is that why you do it? Is it warding off bad luck? I think so. So there's my 2 teaspoons of salt. Salt back over here, and oh no, I spilled some. Oh, be gone, demons. So next we need a cup of cold water. Let's see if this is all melted. Almost melted there, the shortening. So we're going to grab a cup of cold water. I'm just going to nip over to the I'm thinking, I don't believe I've touched my face during the run of this video, but I feel like I've touched my apron so many times. I don't know, maybe you can turn that into a drinking game. How many times did she touch her apron? Ugh. It's a clean apron, you guys. Oh, speaking of clean, this is important. You need to have a nice clean surface to knead your dough on. And you're going to need to have a pair of clean tea towels to put over your buns when they rise tomorrow. So, this is all melted now. I'll just give this a little stir. So this is our milk and melted shortening. Oh, no, there's still a few little blobs. Let's just make those blobs be gone. All right, there we go. Pour all of that in there and give it a beat. Next, we put in the yeast. And this is satisfying because, you know, look at that. So all the yeast goes in there. Grab our big spoon. Make sure that you get everything out of the bottom of the cup, even if there's some little kind of blobby bits in the bottom. Don't worry about it. Just scoop them all out. Once you start kneading, they'll get worked right in. So grab all that. Give that another nice do. Now comes the fun part. Now comes the part where we start adding the flour. So what I did, I actually sterilized the surface underneath here before I got started so that I could have all of my things, and then when the time came, I could just pull my cloth out of here and have a nice clean surface to work on with my nice clean hands and my plain old flour. That's all you need at this point. And you're going to start adding flour. You're going to stir and eventually knead. So, get a good stirring spoon here. And, whoops, more salt. Big old demons. There we go. So, in the end, the recipe calls for 7.5 cups of flour. I don't think any of us have ever successfully managed to get 7.5 cups of flour in here. So, like, aim for 7, but be prepared. It's work to get those last bits in there. So that's my first cup. Here we go. Cup number 2. These are a little bit heaping cups too. I think it's gonna be about 6.5 that goes in here. Cup number 2, giving it a stir. This is still very liquidy. That's fine. Just stir it reasonably well between each cup so that it all comes together when it all comes together. Cup number 3. I do actually have another big thing of flour, but this is the one that I keep on the shelf because I'm not usually doing things that take 7.5 cups of it. But, you know, all bets are off while we're in quarantine. Here we go. Was this 3 or 4? We'll find out soon enough. Do 4 or 5. See, this is what happens. You get a few head injuries, you take your eyes off the prize for 2 minutes, and suddenly you have no idea where you are with baking bread. But the good thing about this is that it's not about the amount that you're adding. It's about getting the dough to the right consistency. So this is starting to be pretty doughy. Soon we will be kneading this. Again, you should have sparkling clean hands. That means a full 20 seconds of scrubbing. You know how to do this. If you don't know how to do this, there are so many videos that'll tell you how. Okay, so I feel like this is probably scoop 6 because you can see it's starting to really get doughy. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to take a final So again, it's not about the volume of flour, it's about getting the dough to the right consistency. So I'm going to take a cup of flour, scatter it here, spread it out, and turn my dough right onto it. And scrape out the bowl, because all kinds of stuff in there in the bottom. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Okay, I don't really want to get in there and like start scraping with my fingernails, because that seems kind of gross when we're in the middle of a pandemic, so I won't. But you know, we got most of it out of there. Take your bowl out of the way, because you don't need it anymore, and it's just going to take up a bunch of space. And take another spoon here to scrape this off, just because again, scraping with the fingers, the fingernails, is kind of gross right now, so we'll avoid that. Here we go. So, if you've never done any kneading of dough before, this is still fairly soft. So you're just kind of folding it towards the middle, folding it in on itself, and then pushing down. So you sort of fold and push. Very satisfying. The dough is nice and warm. Feels kind of good on the fingers. And you can see it's starting to become quite smooth. And eventually, I think it'll probably eat up all of the flour that's here, maybe. But I don't think we'll need to add any more. So just fold and push, fold and push. And this doesn't take very long. I mean, I only had 18 minutes on my camera roll here, so I think we're doing okay. And fold and push, fold and push. Look at this, looks beautiful. Yeah, I'm just gonna pound this a little bit more. Make sure that it's really, it should be sort of smooth and elastic. You shouldn't have bits clinging to you. And then I ran out of memory. And so we'll just pretend that, like in a baking video, you would have seen that I literally at that point rolled the dough up into a ball, and I put it into a bowl covered, and I put it in the fridge. And so now, 8 hours later, it's not 8 hours later, it's I don't know, 19 hours later, but like that's how it goes sometimes. So however long it's been, you left your dough in there, and it was small when it went in, and now it's roughly doubled in size. So what we're going to do next is punch it down, give it a few good bops just to make it kind of flatten it out, and then grab yourself a knife. It should not be a serrated knife if you can avoid that, easier if it's a sharp one, and then you can just kind of cut it into pieces. It makes life a lot easier if you just cut this instead of trying to rip it apart, so you have some idea how much you have and how far it will go. It goes without saying, obviously, that we should have sparkling clean hands when we're doing this. Yes, I washed my hands, and yes, I disinfected my phone again. Thank you for asking. So in the 19 hours since yesterday's part of this video, we have gone from 28 cases to 41 cases. So again, please stay home, flatten that curve, you guys. And while we're here, we're gonna bake these buns. So I am cutting this up into like 4 big chunks, and we're gonna try and get a dozen buns out of each chunk. So that would give us 2 dozen buns. That would be 2 dozen on each of my, let's just see here. So cut this piece into 3. And so this is a chunk a little bit bigger than my thumb, sort of saddle size. And then what you do is you shape them, and you pinch the top and you pull it under so that the top becomes quite smooth, and the bottom, whatever, it doesn't matter, it's the bottom, you put it in like this. There are other ways to do this. There are those who take 3 of these quite small and put them in a muffin cup together. So you get like a clover leaf kind of a thing. God is like a shamrock, small, green, and split 3 ways. We're just gonna go kind of old school with this and just have our standard bun-shaped buns. I don't know how 2 dozen is gonna really work on the... I usually, honestly, I usually get about 3.5 dozen, but no, 3.5 dozen. I'm trying to get 4 dozen. Yes, that makes a great deal more sense. So that should be 6, and this should be 3 more. 1, 2, 3. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how this works. Maybe if I give them 4 across. Now you want to give your buns a little bit of space between them because they will grow by, you know, a factor of, well, 100%. I mean, they should double in size roughly after this second go round of rising, which is going to take another couple of hours. So really, when you're starting on the Nannie Buns, what you want to think about is like, right now, it's like this interesting science experiment that you're starting, and eventually it will pay off in something down the road, and that is the best way to think about it, because that first bit, you know, takes a little less than 20 minutes to get them started, and then they're in the fridge just kind of happening, so that when the time is right the next day, 19 hours later, you can suddenly be like, oh hey, it's time to shape the rolls. So now it's like 4:30 now, so we'll have these for a late dinner, but my actual goal is to make a lot of things that I'm able to freeze right now. I figure the supply lines are fine. There's a lot of very brave and underpaid people who are out delivering things even as we speak. So we're not gonna like run out of anything or have shortages of anything, but in the longer term, depending on how long we need to be practicing self-isolation and social distancing, you know, it may get a little tougher to get some basic things. And given that I was in a position that I was able to stock up a little bit more, I'd like to know that my freezer is full, so that for the people who weren't able to stock up a little bit more, there's like bread on the shelves at the grocery store when they go to get it. I don't imagine that that will be a problem, but clearly I do imagine that that will be a problem because I actually just said it. So that was a dozen buns that I just shaped out right there in however long that took. And that's basically what you do. You just kind of hang out and shape your buns. So I don't know. I mean, do you need to listen to me talk for the whole time? Maybe I'll edit this because that's probably get a little boring. Yeah. So 10 minutes or so later, you have your buns all shaped. And this is 4 dozen buns on 2 good sized pans. We got a little bit of space between them so that they can grow. Next, you want to get your tea towels, soak them in hot water, and then wring them out until they're as wrung out as you can get. They're just damp. You want these tea towels to be super duper, just came out of the laundry clean. You're absolutely certain there's no pet hair on them. But like, this is how we do it, man. It's old school. They're Nannie Buns. If you have a proofing cabinet in your home, you could use the proofing cabinet, but you're not a professional baker. You're in quarantine. Grab a tea towel. If you don't have a tea towel, to be honest, I have done this with like a clean t-shirt, you know, when I was living in a place that I didn't have the luxury of having a lot of tea towels. Damp t-shirt, it did the job. So, you know, don't be too fussy, don't be too hard on yourself, work with what you got, and cover these up with your nice warm damp cloths, and then put them somewhere warm, like on top of the stove. And we're going to just let them rise. I actually turn the oven on because I like to have a little bit extra warmth. You don't have to, just the warmest spot in your kitchen. And we're gonna leave those for, I don't know, a couple hours. It's 4:51 now, and we'll see when I remember there's buns again. Probably when they start to smell really good. So these have had a couple of hours, and just like on a real baking show, look at that. They're all nice and puffy. They are no longer exercising social distancing. They have about doubled in size. I actually put parchment paper in the bottom of this because I have parchment paper and it works really well to keep things from sticking. If you don't have parchment paper, a little spray with the Pam or the off-brand canola spray or some shortening or a little oil wipe down, basically just so that your buns don't stick. I have my oven at 400 degrees and I'm baking for about 15 minutes. The original recipe says 425 degrees for 25 minutes, which makes very, very brown buns, like kind of too brown. So we'll see. We've got another 3 minutes on our ones that are in the oven, and between now and then, let's just take a little look. Hope cottage casserole. We're not there yet, but if we get there, ready? 1 can cream of mushroom soup. Empty soup into casserole, add milk, half a cup, and mix thoroughly. Add 1 7-ounce can of tuna, drained and flaked. And 1 cup potato chips, 1 cup canned peas, and 1 tablespoon lemon juice, 3 tablespoons of chopped green pepper. Stir well. Sprinkle top with remaining half cup of potato chips. Bake 20 minutes at 350 degree oven. So if you've reached the point where you are making a casserole out of cream of mushroom soup, tuna fish, potato chips, and canned peas, here's a recipe for that, I guess. You know, it sounds better than spaghetti and pickles. So next time on Cooking in Quarantine, vote in the comments. I have the ingredients to make pound cake, which is Lou's favorite. So Lou, if you are interested in pound cake, or anybody maybe is an Elspeth fan and wants to make her special Christmas pound cake, or I also have the ingredients for Lynn's peanut butter cookies. If you are on Team Lynn and you want the recipe for the peanut butter cookies, I have that here. Vote in the comments. In the interim, I'm going to throw it out there that there were a couple of recipes that were kind of intriguing that I don't actually have all the ingredients for. I thought I did. First, we have the very important, very special occasion chocolate frosted cookies. And it turns out I don't have marshmallows to put in the frosting. I had no idea. I remember these cookies distinctly. I did not know that there were marshmallows in the frosting. So I guess if marshmallows showed up on my doorstep, I could make the chocolate frosted cookies. And the other one, this is sort of interesting. The note here says, Mommy used to make these cookies in pretty shapes. I don't know what happened to the cookie press. So this is my Nannie's shortbread. And oh, Mom, you don't know what happened to the cookie press? Me neither. So if you were wondering what this very, very pretty, I'm going to say 70-year-old cookie press produces, I do also have the glacé cherries, but I don't have any cornstarch, you guys. What? Who runs out of cornstarch? Apparently me during the apocalypse. So here's our first round of buns at 15 minutes. Let's see how they look. Guys, look at these. Oh, we'll stop that noise, shall we? Yes, let's. Okay, so those turned out looking very nice indeed. Nicely browned. I'm gonna pop these babies in and turn that on. Let's take a look. Super hot, sure are. Nice and brown on the bottom, nice and brown on the top. And if we grab a knife here and rip these babies open, oh yeah, that's looking very good indeed. In a perfect world, we then take some butter and put that on top. Maybe you don't do butter. Maybe you have margarine. Maybe you are a person who is a purist and doesn't need any of this stuff. Well, you go ahead and be a purist. For the rest of us, here's what the Nannie Buns look like. I hope that you enjoyed cooking in quarantine. Let me know in the comments what you want to make next time. If that's going to be Lou's pound cake or Lynn's peanut butter cookies. From the bunker, signing off. Stick together, guys. Together we will flatten the curve. Okay, honest to God, you guys, this is so good. Like, I don't even have words. Well, so good. So good.